Well, good afternoon, everyone. It should be noon in the Eastern Time Zone. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm the webinar coordinator for SCORE Fairfield County. And today we're going to be discussing with our presenter, Cliff Enico, what most successful small businesses have in common. Many of you have heard Cliff at SCORE workshops in the past and or read his books and or seen him on YouTube, but more about him in just a second. First, just a little bit about SCORE. Most of you are familiar with SCORE because you're here and you've either come on via the website or through a mailing from our organization. But, you know, SCORE is a national organization. There are over 10,000 volunteers primarily. They're all volunteers, and some people of the folks, maybe 25% are still working, 75% say are retired. We started in the mid-'60s. We're a part of the government's Small Business Administration, and there are about 300 chapters around the United States. SCORE Fairfield County is one of them. Within that group, which is headquartered out of Norwalk on East Avenue, we have about 100 volunteers currently. The volunteers are either industry experts and or process experts or subject matter experts, a lot of them in recent technologies. When I think about our primary deliverables that we create and offer in the marketplace, they come in the form of workshops, is what this technically is. And workshops can either be local workshops that are usually conducted in libraries around Fairfield County, or these new webinars, series that we just started at the very end of last year. We also offer, and one of our core offerings, if not the core offering, is our one-on-one counseling and mentoring that we do in our office in Norwalk, or it can be arranged with one of the counselors in the chapter to come to another third-party location. We oftentimes end up at a Starbucks, for example. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already, I'm sure many of you have, to go to scorefairfieldcounty.org. We've got a new website, pretty slick, I have to say. You'll see a lot more detail about our offerings, and you'll get updates on what workshops are coming up over the next 30 and 60 days. So let me give you just a couple more minutes, 2 minutes on what we're going to do now for the between now and 1 o'clock. It's going to last an hour, what's left of it. It's being recorded, both the sound and, of course, the slides that Cliff will show, and they will be available on scorefairfieldcounty.org under the Workshops tab, probably, though, not for 7 to 10 days. So you'll be able to get a copy of them there. And we've set aside 10 minutes, plus or minus a few minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. So if you have a question, and many of you will, there's probably going to be over 100 participants in this call, please put them down in the lower left-hand chat corner, and I'll pick a few off at the end which look particularly good and direct them to Cliff. Cliff, okay, Cliff is an attorney and a small business consultant in Fairfield, Connecticut. He's helped launch over 15,000 businesses in his 35-year career. He's the author of 16 books, most recently one that sounds particularly fascinating, The Crowdfunding Handbook, How to Raise Capital for Your Business Using Equity Funding Portals. We could have a whole discussion on that, and probably will sometime in the future. Cliff is also known as the former host of Money Hunt. It's a fast-paced PBS reality television series. Sounds a lot like Shark Tank, and it was probably, some would say, the precursor to Shark Tank. So congratulations on that too, Cliff. So Cliff, thanks for being here on behalf of our audience and SCORE. Look forward to hearing your presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, and then in 45 minutes or so, we'll have some Q&A. So Cliff, please take it away.
Great, Steve. Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody participating today. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to listen to a lawyer tell you how to build your business better. That shows that you guys are truly hardcore and have absolutely no idea about how valuable or how unvaluable this information is going to be. I'm not sure about that. But let's get started. Steve did a great job of introducing me, and the one part of that I think you should listen to, yes, I am an attorney. I plead guilty to that. But the fact is that over 35 years, I have worked with somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people who've started businesses of their own. And when you've worked with that many people over the years, you see patterns that a lot of other people don't see. You see patterns in the ones that make it, that go on to become successful, and you see patterns in the ones that crash and burn. And that's what I want to talk about in the next 45 minutes. What are some of the things I've seen that make a difference between success and failure when you're running any kind of a business of your own, not just a traditional small brick and mortar business, but a self-employed person, any kind of self-employed person, any kind of entrepreneur. The rules are the same, I think, across all of those categories. Let's get started, and if you ever doubted that I was an attorney, take a look at this slide with a couple of things. Like any attorney, I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to do before I tell you what I'm going to do. Obviously, I am not, affiliated with SCORE in any way. I am not a SCORE counselor, at least not yet. That may happen someday, but as of today, I am not. So anything I say is strictly Cliff Enico's thing. If you listen to something that I say and you think it's a good idea and you implement it and it turns out to be a total disaster and you end up going bankrupt, your spouse divorces you, your dog pees on your leg, and you end up living in a diaper box under the Brooklyn Bridge, it is entirely my fault. SCORE has nothing whatsoever to do with that. In fact, it's really not even my fault either. I'm a lawyer and you can't sue me. So there. The second disclaimer, though, is the more important one, which is, while we are going to have a lot of time for questions and answers at the end of this program, and I will certainly try to answer whatever questions you have to the best of my ability, nothing in this program is intended to be one-on-one advice. I know, like, looking at the names on the roster here, I do recognize a few of you guys, but I don't know any of you well enough to be able to give you one-on-one advice. For that, you actually have to retain me as a lawyer, pay some money up front, and I really got to drive deep and really get to know you and your situation much better than I can in a one-hour webinar. So while I am going to be giving some legal information in this program, possibly during the Q&A, it should not be relied upon as one-on-one advice. So that's the end of the business portion here. Now let's start having some fun here. So how do you succeed in business? What does success mean? To quote that wonderful Justin Bieber song that's popular now, what do you mean? What you mean success? I mean, success means different things to different people, but I'm going to take a hard and fast view on this. I do have a definition of small business success that I think is fairly reliable. And you might agree with some of it or disagree with some of it, but it doesn't really matter. Number one, the business has to make money. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that money is the sole means by which success is determined for a business. I'm not saying that at all, but let's face it, this is a business we are talking about here. We're not talking about how to be successful in life. We're talking about how to be successful with a business. And the key difference between a business and any other type of human activity is that it makes money. If you are doing something that is fun and enjoyable, but nobody's paying you to do it, that is what we call a hobby. Now, that's not the IRS definition, of course. The IRS definition is a lot more technical as to what's a business, what's a hobby. But for Cliff Enico, that makes the difference to me. If you're doing something that's fun and nobody's paying you for it, that is a hobby. If you are doing something that is either enjoyable or not and people are paying you for it, that is a business. The business has to make money. Even a nonprofit has to make money. Believe it or not. Nonprofit does not mean that you do not make a profit. The first challenge that any nonprofit business or nonprofit organization has, it has to make money. If it doesn't make money, then there's not enough to cover its expenses, and there's nothing left over to do the wonderful, charitable, save the world type of thing that the nonprofit was set up to provide. A lot of unsuccessful nonprofits learn this lesson only too late. It's great to have a wonderful mission, but if you're not making a profit, you will not have a chance to execute that mission in any way. So keep that in mind. Nonprofit does not mean you don't make money. Nonprofit means that the profits are not distributed to the owners in the form of a dividend or a distribution. The profits by law are plowed back into whatever the charitable purpose of the organization is. That's what separates a nonprofit from a for-profit, but both of them have to make money. Secondly, the business survives difficult times. A business that only thrives when the economy is going full stop and double-digit growth is not really a very successful business. Successful businesses have to survive the hard times, just like the Great Recession we've been through. The business has to grow over time. A business that is stagnant and is still producing the same amount of revenue as it did 10, 15 years ago is not a very successful business. In fact, given inflation, I would argue that a business that is not growing is failing. Because while it's still making the same overall dollars, those dollars are worth less and less with each passing year. We tend to discount inflation a lot now because we're living in a low inflation environment. But for those of us who survived the 1970s and the early 1980s, when interest rates were like 15%, we remember what this is, and we may be going back into an inflationary time. There are different opinions about that. The business must be competitive. The business has to be able to stand up to competition and survive and beat them wherever possible. A business that is losing out to competition or that is becoming obsolete because of new developments in technology is not a successful business. The business has to have an impact on the world. It has to make a difference in some way, and I believe very strongly about this. Young people today don't want to work for a business that just makes widgets. They want to work for a business that has a purpose, a mission, a goal to do something, good in society. Well, we can all argue about what that means. What is good, what is not. Plato, in the first page of his Republic, said Socrates is sitting in a bath somewhere, and he's asking all these young guys around him, "Hey, what is the good? What is the good?" The ancient Greeks have been asking that question. 500, 2,000 years ago, they were asking this question. We can all debate what's good and what isn't, but the business has to have a purpose. It has to have a way in which it somehow makes the world better, at least for some people. One of the first questions I ask people when they talk about their business plan: how do you make your customers' lives better? Faster, more convenient, whatever. There's all kinds of different ways of measuring it, but you have to have a clear answer to that. I want to know, what impact does your business have on the world? The business must be highly regarded, or at least grudgingly respected. A successful business is one that is widely viewed as successful. People acknowledge, that business, yep, highly successful, highly regarded. We have a positive opinion of it, or at least grudgingly respected. Right now, I'm sure that a lot of my listeners do not have a very high opinion of a company like, say, Goldman Sachs, the big investment banking firm in New York. But I don't think, and you may be right about that, you may not. That is not a conversation for today. But I don't think too many people would argue that Goldman Sachs is very, very successful at what it does. You may have a grudging respect for Goldman Sachs, but you cannot argue with the numbers that they achieve in that business. Sometimes you like the business, sometimes you don't. But regardless, you have to respect that anybody who has built a $50 billion business knows a lot more than you do, whether you like them or not. I think you have to accept that. That's it. It may be grudging respect, but respect has to be there. To quote Machiavelli, it is good for a leader to be loved, but it is essential that the leader be feared. Now, I'm not so sure everybody will buy into that concept, but when you're talking about success in the real world and competition and the real world, it's kind of hard to beat Machiavelli. Machiavelli is somebody you have to take into account whether you like his views or not. And that was one of his great quotes. It is important for it is good for a leader to be loved by his people, but it is essential that he be feared. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Then last but not least, people want to be part of this business. A successful business advertises itself. People want to work for the company. People want to invest in the company. People want to be part of it in some way. If I say Facebook, there's an opportunity at Facebook. All of you are going to say, "Oh, wait, yeah, where do I go? What are they looking for people? Is it an investment? Are they crowdfunding?" The minute I say Facebook, you want to be a part of Facebook, right? To use the famous Chinese quote, success has 1,000 fathers, failure is an orphan. Everybody wants to be part of a successful business. This is how I define success. You may have other ways of defining success, and we can have some fun with that during the Q&A if you want. But those are my definitions, at least for a successful business, which is what we're talking about today. Okay, so what does it take to be a successful business owner? I'm not just going to leave this at the businesses. What about the people who run them? Well, first of all, those of you know I have a YouTube video. It's on my YouTube channel. You go to youtube.com, search for Cliff Enico. I always go by Cliff, never Clifford. And look at my video called 3 Personality Traits That Every Successful Entrepreneur Must Develop. I have a whole hour video up on YouTube. It's got about 20, 30,000 views the last time I looked at it, about this whole issue of what makes a successful entrepreneur. It's a very interesting, kind of thought-provoking video, kind of philosophical in a way, but again, based on experience, not on theory. Successful business owners are realists. They look at the world the way it is, not the way it should be. They're not, I talk about successful entrepreneurs being cynical on my video, and I don't mean by cynical that they're negative Nellies, they're always looking down, pessimistic. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that they are realists. They're not dreamers. They're not idealists. They look at the world the way it is without any illusions, without any rose-colored glasses. They see what's actually going on in the world outside of them. They don't get lost inside their heads the way some of us always do. They are extremely intelligent. I am not saying at all that they're stupid, but they are not intellectuals. These are not people who are in love with ideas and love debating ideas and the whys and wherefores of, gee, that's interesting. Why is society going in this direction? Why are people voting for that candidate, or why are people attracted to that political candidate? They don't get involved in the whys and wherefores. They just simply look around them and say, oh, that's what's going on? Okay, how do I exploit that? How do I take advantage of that? That's where the world is going. I mean, maybe I can change it, maybe I can't, but right now, how do I make money off it? There's a trend, something is trending. Can I take advantage of that trend? Can I get business out of that? Can I get customers? Can I get money? Whatever. That's how they look at the world. They are not dreamers. They're not idealists. They're not intellectuals. They tend to use their brains, but they also, more important, they use their 5 senses. Sight, smell, taste, hearing, touch. They look at the world around them and they soak up as much information as they can, and when they see things happening, they follow what the outside world is doing. They don't try to make the outside world conform to what they want to do. I say this in all my talks. Nobody will pay you for doing what you want to do. They will only pay you for doing things that they want done. And your mission as an entrepreneur or as a business owner is to find out what those things are and give it to them whether you like it or not, whether you think it's something that they should have or not. If your customers want X, your job is to provide X in a way that makes you that generates a profit for you in your business. They are confident, but they are not macho. That's a big myth. When we think of a successful entrepreneur, especially a tech entrepreneur, we're thinking of somebody who's type A, driven, macho, very sure of themselves, very self-confident. Let me tell you, it's not true at all. So the successful people, the most successful people that I've ever worked with in my profession, in my business, are almost always neurotic, insecure, people. These are people who don't want to commit because they're afraid that they're going to be wrong. They look for problems even when the problems don't exist half the time, which is one of the secrets to their success, by the way. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they never get cocky. They never get complacent. Whenever a client says to me, oh, Cliff, it's taken us several years, but I think I finally understand this business now. I know what I should do. My first thought is, you poor fool. Look around you. Somewhere there is a brick flying at your head at 90 miles an hour, and you're not seeing it because you're not looking for it. You think you know what you're doing. The minute you think you know what you're doing, you are probably wrong. And that is just a basic rule of survival when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a self-employed person. They know what they know, but they also know what they don't know. A successful, a self-employed person or a business owner who tries to do everything themselves tends not to succeed. They tend to get lost. They fail to distinguish between important things and unimportant things. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. They know what they should be doing themselves, and they know what they should be delegating to other people. As a lawyer, I see this probably more than most people do. I work with far too many people who are trying to do their own legal contracts when what they should be doing is looking for the next business opportunity. Don't get me wrong. What I do is not rocket science. Read a few books, look at some forums online, and you can probably, in a certain amount of time, learn how to draft legal contracts without the assistance of an attorney. It's not rocket science what I do for people, but is it what you should be doing with your time? Is it the highest and best use of your time at a particular moment? Spending too much time on a legal contract and missing an important business opportunity or a shift in the marketplace is not a good thing. If you want to be a lawyer, go to law school. It's 3 years, and then you have a grueling 10 to 15-year apprenticeship. And then when you're finished with that, and of course by that time you're probably going to be 98 years old, you will know what I know. That's the thing. People ask me, hey, Cliff, why do you charge so much for what you do? It only takes you 15 minutes to form an LLC. And my answer is yes, that is correct. But you know something? It took me 35 years to learn how to do an LLC in 15 minutes. How long is it going to take you to get to that same point? Seriously, they know what they know, but they also know what they don't know. They focus on the important things, and they delegate the unimportant things to lawyers, accountants, other professionals, marketing experts, whatever. They are insecure without being paralyzed by fear. This is, again, I go back to that. Successful entrepreneurs are neurotic. They're always worried they're missing something, that they're overlooking something. And they look for problems in places that most normal people don't look. And that's why they're successful, because, number one, they see threats before they become impossible to stop. They look for problems before they become overwhelming. So they see them at a point where they're easy to deal with. That's one thing. But they also see opportunities, too, that nobody else sees. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this, where a client, in looking at a problem and trying to solve a problem, has stumbled, often unwittingly, onto a new market opportunity that nobody else has seen, because nobody else is looking at it with the laser eye that this particular person is looking at it. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that in my career. Being insecure and neurotic, at least you can go to bed at nights knowing that you haven't overlooked anything. And that can give you at least a little bit of confidence. They know both how to manage and to lead. Leadership is an overrated talent. That's something I have to say sometime in this program. I think leadership, everything now is leadership. You got to lead, you got to lead, you got to lead. Well, that's okay. But if you're leading people, but you're not on top of the details, you're going to lead them off a cliff like the lemmings. That's what's going to happen. Leadership is great. My greatest quote on leadership, and I don't really know where it comes from, but I know it's not from me. The former president who said it. I'm not sure about that. But he said, somebody famous, a famous politician once said, the key to leading is not telling people where to go. The key to leadership is to find out where the crowd is going, and then you jump out in front of them and start waving a flag saying, this way. That's what they do. Again, that cynicism thing. You look to see where the market is going, where people are going, what's trending, and then you get out a little bit ahead of them and say, hey, this way, this way, this way. That's the key to leadership. Managing means staying on top of details. It's making sure that the customers are being serviced on time, that the customers are getting what they need, that the systems are working properly, that the computers work properly. Staying on top of the details so that the money continues to flow in. Both skills are important, and you have to do them. Now, of course, a successful entrepreneur doesn't get lost in the details, but they've got to be on top of the details. I find that many of my successful clients would be considered micromanagers by their employees especially, and I'm not so sure that's a bad thing. Being on top of the details means that you don't miss stuff, and that's important. They work hard. They work smart. No need to really beat that one to death. All the books have written about that. Here's the biggest one for me, and especially for people who go into entrepreneurship out of more of a corporate environment. This is probably the biggest challenge that they have in the world. Okay, whoever that is, please turn off that phone in the background because it's very, very distracting. The key is and especially for people coming out of a corporate environment, they have trouble dealing with imperfect information. When you're in a big corporation, you have to nail everything down. When you're giving a presentation to your boss or to the board, you have to make sure that everything is nailed down. You can answer every question that is possibly answered. You have to have 110% information before you recommend a course of action. If you do not do that, you are putting your career at risk. That is the worst way to run an entrepreneurial small business. Oftentimes, when you are running a business, you don't have perfect information. There's a market opportunity. It's fast-moving. We live in a very fast-moving world. If you wait for the information to be perfect and to have all the answers to all the questions you can possibly ask, the opportunity probably has passed you by at that point. Very often you have to be comfortable acting with 80%, 60%, sometimes 20%. Information. A publisher calls me and they say they're looking for a book on X. The X is something that nobody has ever written about. No one's ever done it before. They're looking to me because it's relevant to the world of small business and what I do. I have to learn to say yes and then figure out how to do it. That's what I have to do. I can't look around and say, well, wait a minute, I really don't know about that. I've never thought about that. You say things like that and you lose opportunities. Sometimes the best way to succeed, and this is part of one of my most successful videos on YouTube, How to Sell Anything to Anybody. That one's got about 120,000 views. My key message there in that video is don't wait for things to be perfect. You've got to jump into the deep end of the pool and then figure out how to do the dog paddle. You do it over and over again when you run a small business or an entrepreneurial venture. Here's a key thing. Successful business owners know the difference between being ethical and being nice. Too many people, especially younger people these days, I don't mean to knock millennials. I think the world of them. I love their energy. I love their image. I love their vision. But this is a problem, especially with younger people, which will be cured. I think it was Mark Twain who said, "Idealism is the most curable of diseases. It is cured by age and experience." Somebody said that. Again, it wasn't me. Don't quote me on that. I think it was Mark Twain who said that. It would have been a right thing for him to say. But there's a very big difference between being ethical and being nice. Being ethical in business is absolutely essential. People have to be able to trust your word. People have to trust your character. You have to have character in business. If you act inconsistently, if you treat everybody, too differently, at some point people wonder, is there a there? Obviously, with an election going on right now, we're all asking this question to the political candidates too. If all they're doing is responding to the latest polls, you have to wonder, is there anything there? What does this person really believe and care about? If people are asking that question about you as a business person, you got a big problem. So people have to be able to trust you. They have to be able to respect you. They have to know that there's a character there. They may not like all aspects of your character, but again, all you're looking for here is at least grudging respect. In this case. But people have to respect you, and there has to be something to respect. That's being ethical. Being nice will get you killed in business. It absolutely will get you killed. Being nice to the wrong people. We all want to create a good environment for our employees and help them boost their morale because, when employees have good morale, it helps business. No one questions that. But when you're too nice to your employees, what happens? They show up drunk. They show up not at all. They start taking advantage of you. They demand everything. They demand, 100% wage increases, and then when you give it to them, they go and start talking about a union. You can't be too nice to your employees. Your customers, you got to be nice to your customers, of course, right? They're the reason you're there. You don't want to tick them off. But what happens when you're too nice to your customers? They want everything for nothing. They start showrooming. When somebody else is giving them a better deal, they come to your store. They, hey, Cliff, what do you think about this new product, X, Y, and Z? I give you my opinion. I spend time with you. I walk you through different examples. Okay, Cliff, let me get back to you. Let me talk to my spouse. I'll get back to you in a couple of days. And then you go home, you go on Amazon, you buy it for 20% off. This is what people are doing left and right. When you're too nice to your customers, they take advantage. And that is, don't hate them, and please don't hate me for saying that. This is human nature. You cannot buck human nature when you are in business. Your job is to understand human nature, not to change it. You may change it by what you do, but that is not the goal. The goal is to understand human nature and figure out how it works. That is your challenge as an entrepreneur. Then last but not least, they pursue their goals with a drive bordering on ruthlessness. Now, ruthlessness is an ugly word. It is. If I'm at a cocktail party, I point to someone you don't know and say, that's a real ruthless person. You do not want to go talk to that person, okay? But I want you to look this word up. This is your challenge. Go home tonight, look at Wikipedia, look at online sources, and look at what the word really means. It doesn't mean evil or unethical or sleazy or anything like that. It's just another way of saying heedless or reckless. Somebody who is ruthless is someone who goes through life not worrying about what the consequences of their actions are. They do not worry what other people think about them. I could name a couple of political candidates who are perfect examples of this, probably the same people who live in your head. I can't mention names, but you know who I'm talking about. These people go out there and they don't care what people think about them. They just go out there and they get things done. When you are in business and you see something that has to be done, you get to that result no matter what it takes, no matter what gets in your way, what obstacles get in your way, and also no matter who gets in your way. Sometimes the obstacle that prevents you from being successful is not a what, but a who, and you have to get to that result in a legal way. Don't ever commit an illegal act. Don't ever violate the law. No business is ever worth going to jail for. I'm a lawyer. I have to say that, of course. But short of that, you have to get there and make whatever apologies you have to make later on, assuming you have time. Success in entrepreneurship is all about getting to a certain place before anybody else does. You may have to sharpen your elbows and do some pushing and shoving to get there. Once you're there, once you have $1 billion in the bank, you can do some wonderful, wonderful things in the world. But first, you got to get that $1 billion. Sharpen your elbows and start pushing. Okay. Last but not least, let's talk now about here's the slide. This is what I want. Okay, we've talked about what makes a successful business. Now let's talk about the things that the businesses do wrong, and then we'll take questions. I'm almost done here. This is my David Letterman style 12 list of the biggest mistakes that I see my clients making, and that you're probably making too. Number 12, I'll go in reverse order. Number 12, not knowing the customer. Selling to imaginary people. That may sound so weird. But a lot of people I talk to, they talk about their customers, and I'm thinking, I don't know anybody like these people. I don't know anybody who's like, what these people are talking about. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Not understanding the customer, not understanding what's going on in the market, not being cynical enough. That's what I'm barking at in number 12. Number 11, underestimating the competition. Every business has competition. Don't ever come to me or to a score counselor and say, my business has no competition. You are wrong. If you think you have no competition, you are so wrong and you don't know. It's because you haven't looked hard enough. That's the problem. You've been lazy. Or I shouldn't say that. You haven't been neurotic enough. I talked before about being neurotic. Here's where it comes into play. Every business has competition, but sometimes they hide. Sometimes the competition is not a who. It is a what, a new technology that is making your product or service obsolete. Maybe the internet. Sometimes it's something that's going to happen in the future that's going to come down and clobber you. Walmart, for example, doesn't have a lot of places in Connecticut yet, but they are starting to move into Connecticut, and that's going to have a huge impact on business here in Connecticut. If you have a packaged liquor store, the fact that Connecticut is considering opening up liquor sales, allowing supermarkets to carry liquor 24/7, that's going to wipe out a lot of packaged liquor stores if that bill passes. This is the kind of stuff you have to think about. There's always competition out there, and you're always looking for strategies to crush them. Number 10, not standing out in the marketplace, especially in the digital world. You can't just be a Me Too business anymore. The internet has made it much, much harder to stand out in the marketplace. These days, I can tell you as a professional speaker, as somebody who does about 30, 40 talks a year around the country, I can't just do a straight PowerPoint anymore. I'm a circus act. I got to stand on my head, whistle Dixie, and do breakdancing moves to keep the attention of my audience for 45 minutes. That's just what I have to do. I got to be a stand-up comic. I got to be a Shakespearean actor. I got to be someone who plays to your emotions, make you laugh, make you cry, make you scream, make you angry. This is what I got to do. I got to do that because that's what it takes to stand out. 2 words for you, Lady Gaga. You know what I'm talking about here. Why does she do all these outrageous things like wearing a meat dress? It's because that's what she has to do to stand out in a very crowded marketplace. You are in show business. When you are in business, you are in show business, and you have to do something to stand out in the marketplace, even if it's something a little crazy. As P.T. Barnum once said, a Connecticut native, by the way, there is no such thing as bad publicity, and this is true today as it was back in the 1840s when he was active. Okay, number 9, paralysis by analysis. Thinking too hard, thinking too long, spending too much time studying the problem and not enough time taking action. Getting caught up on unimportant details, trying to get perfect information, like we did in the last slide. Waiting too long and thinking too hard, opportunities pass you by. You have to jump in. As any software engineer or software developer will tell you, there is no such thing as a version 1.0 software product that is bug-free. Sometimes you got to get the product out and clean up and get the business and clean up the messes later in the version 1.1, where you correct all the bugs. You cannot release a product that is 100% perfect. By the time you do that, your competition has leapfrogged you. Number 8, poor or unrealistic financial planning, especially regarding cash flows. Probably one of the biggest reasons small businesses fail is undercapitalization, not having enough money to survive the first 6, 12, 18 months of the business's life cycle. And that really boils down to just poor planning. It's not that you didn't have enough money, it's that you underestimated how much money this business was going to take to get off the ground, and you didn't budget for it. You didn't get an SBA loan. You didn't do whatever you had to do to provide for the cash flow. Small business is not about earnings and profits. Small business is all about cash flow and maintaining a positive cash flow over time. If you're not comfortable that you can do that for the first 6, 12, 18 months of your business's existence, you need to plan better for that. Running out of cash is one of the dumbest and yet one of the most common reasons for business failure. Number 7, weak, unfocused, or indecisive leadership, not being ruthless enough, not taking action where action is called for, being namby-pamby because you're afraid of offending your employees. Here is a piece of advice from me that may sound very Machiavellian, and I apologize, but it's probably one of the most important things that I have learned in working with entrepreneurs and also managing my own business, and that is one of the greatest obstacles to success in any field of human endeavor is the desire to be loved. The desire to have people love you. Success in business especially, but also success in other aspects of life as well, means not caring about whether people like you or not. This is what having character is all about. I don't care if you agree with me or not. I mean, I'll listen to you if you have a good opinion, but I don't really care if you like me or not. I don't care if you agree with me or not. This is what I believe. This is what I'm going to state, and this is what I'm going to do. That is the key to being ruthless, and that is the key to getting things done in the real world. Being hesitant to take action because you're afraid people are not going to approve of it is a big cause of business failure and also failure in life. Number 6, working in the business rather than on the business, getting so caught up in the day-to-day details of the business that you forget to figure out how the business is going to grow. You're not looking at the market anymore. You're not seeing what's going on. You're not seeing what's going on in the competitive environment. You're so busy just getting things done and making sure that things get out on time that you forget where the business is going. Are there any threats out there? Are there any opportunities? When was the last time you did a SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. That's the stuff that you as the owner of the business should be doing. The best book ever written on this, of course, is The E-Myth Revisited. It's a book by Michael Gerber, Gerber, like the baby food. It came out, I think, in the 1970s. It is still the all-time classic on running a small business, in that his message is too many entrepreneurs and small business owners fail because they get so caught up in the day-to-day details and the day-to-day operations that they fail to think strategically about where the business should be going. That is a book that should be on every business owner's bookshelf, along with, of course, all of mine. Number 5, ignoring the legal, tax, and regulatory environment. Understanding your legal environment will never, ever put food on the table or generate revenue. Let me say that right up front. Nobody ever won an award for a successful business based on their legal compliance. I think I can make that statement uncategorically, but it's something that can kill you if you don't understand it. Too many businesses have started out and have been successful only to be blindsided by a change in the laws. Like, again, the liquor store that's now facing competition from supermarkets. Changes in the law, a legal mistake. They didn't do their payroll taxes properly. I can't tell you how many restaurants have gone under because they have not done their payroll tax calculations right for the state of Connecticut. Every good business needs a good lawyer, a good accountant, and you need to visit with them regularly to understand the legal, tax, and regulatory environment of your business. Your business may not be regulated by the government, but every business has a legal and tax environment, and you ignore it at your peril. Number 4, creating a workplace culture that alienates employees. Those of you who worked in corporate America, you know we have all worked in toxic environments. We have all worked in environments where employees were undervalued, where employees were treated like costs rather than assets, where employees felt replaceable. I worked on Wall Street for a few years before going off on my own, and I was just grinding out financial documents. I was doing trust indentures for real estate partnerships back in the early 80s, working for a giant Wall Street law firm. And I remember every day going to work thinking a high school kid with 30 days of training could do the work that I am doing. I am just a cog in a wheel. I am not making a difference. I do not have a career. There's no career path here. All I am is a factory grunt pulling a lever on a machine every day. That is all I am doing. You do not want to create that environment for your employees, especially younger employees. Younger employees have a sense of mission, a sense of purpose. They want to know that they're working in a place that's making a difference, and you have to persuade them that that is real and not just an illusion. Number 3, lack of a succession plan. We all think we are immortal, especially us baby boomers, or what I call baby boom geezers. We're the ones that are going to be rocking in our wheelchairs. At least that's what the Who taught us back in the 1970s. Well, let me tell you, folks, it ain't true. I am 62. I am recognizing now there are limits to what I can do in life. My body is now negotiating with me. It used to be that whenever I told my body, do something, it always did it. Now it's more of a negotiation. Okay, Cliff, I know you want me to do X, Y, and Z. I'll give you X, I'll give you Y, but that Z thing, I ain't doing for you. Sorry, them days are gone. We are all circling the drain here in the baby boom generation, and it's time for us to think, what happens if I don't wake up in the morning? What happens to the business? Will the business survive? You got to have a succession plan. Number 2, always assuming that people will do the right thing. This is an illusion that many, many people have these days, and it's tough. Well, I'm going to do this business because if everybody had access to good organic locavore produce, they'd buy it, they'd do this. The reason people don't eat healthier is because there aren't enough healthy options. Well, that's not true. There are plenty of healthy eating options out there. It's just that people don't do the right thing. Those of you who have seen me live in performance know that I am probably, I'm guilty myself of not always doing this. I don't always go for the organic produce. I don't always do the right thing for whatever reason. People do not always do the right thing. Selling to perfect people does not generate revenue. Whenever you're selling to people, you can only sell to real people, not ideal people, not model people. Some people are more disciplined than others. There is absolutely no question about that. But selling to people who always do the right thing means that you are selling to plaster saints. And plaster saints are a problem because, number 1, they don't buy anything, and number 2, they have a nasty tendency to become martyrs, which is a topic we can discuss another day. Last but not least, worrying too much about what other people think. This is my number 1. And it's very hard for people to do. Once upon a time, we were all 2 years old, and two-year-old people are absolutely ruthless human beings. Male or female, I don't care. A 2-year-old is an absolutely ruthless person. When they see something they want, they go for it. And they may even know, hey, mom's looking at me, I may get a timeout here, but I know she's not going to kill me. She goes to a place called jail if that happens, and that lamp is so cool, I am going for that lamp. That's what a 2-year-old is all about. They go for what they want, and they don't worry about what the consequences of those actions are going to be. No one would ever say that a 2-year-old is immoral. At 2 years old, we don't have moral judgment yet. At least that's what psychologists tell us. But a 2-year-old knows that when they see something they want, they go for it. Now, of course, what happens is we've all been socialized by our parents, our teachers, our former employers, our spouses, society at large, that we can't be 2 years old anymore. We can't just go for whatever we want whenever we want it because, people won't like us. We have to kind of do give and take here to be liked. And, we've all been socialized away from our 2-year-old selves. Successful entrepreneurs, at least the most successful, never lose touch with their 2-year-old self. These are people who still say, there might be consequences. I'll try to learn as much about them as I can, but this opportunity is a once-in-a-lifetime. I am going for it because I won't be able to live with myself for the rest of my life if I don't. That is the biggest thing that separates successful entrepreneurs from ordinary mortals, and one of the big and probably the biggest reasons why there aren't more successful entrepreneurs in life, because there aren't enough people who are willing or courageous enough to ignore what life has, the socialization that they've had the last 30, 40, 50 years of their lives, and get back to that inner 2-year-old. That lamp is so cool, I'm willing to risk the time out to get whatever joy that lamp is going to spark in my life. These are my secrets of small business success. Again, feel free to agree or disagree with them if you like. I really don't care, and that's really the truth. This is what life has taught me, and you may be able to teach me some other. I'm perfectly happy to share experiences with you, but this is what I believe makes for a small business success. Here are a couple of my best-selling books. The Small Business Survival Guide is actually a very cool book. I talk a lot more there about the 12 small business mistakes, the 12 enemies that every small businesses have, and how to crush them. And of course, my best-selling book on tax and legal issues for eBay sellers. So, without any further ado, I see I'm exactly at 45 minutes. Let's open the floor to some questions and answers. Steve, I'm handing you the con.
All right. Good, Cliff. Excellent. Right on the money for time-wise. And thanks for that. We've got one question from Donna, which is a really, really good question. And I was a consultant myself for quite a long time. And so it's a long one, so just listen closely, Cliff. As a consultant, I find I give away a lot more information and advice than I'd like to, but sometimes you need to submit detailed proposals that can then be lifted by a client and implemented by internal staff. I was told by a CEO that he does this on a regular basis. Any suggestions on how to handle this? While you're thinking about that, Cliff, it's like a classic, protecting your intellectual capital kind of a question, I would think, from a legal point of view. But everybody has this problem. I had it many, many times myself. But Cliff, what do you think?
Well, let's begin. Let's tie it into what I just talked about here. The problem here is that if you're too nice to your customers, and a client is a customer, you end up giving away everything for nothing. And by the way, I feel your pain here, Donna, completely. I am a consultant. I call myself a lawyer, but I work with businesses. I'm a consultant on legal issues. And I can't tell you how many times each day I get a call from somebody who's looking for free legal advice, or someone who is on LegalZoom. They're trying to create an LLC or a corporation. They just have this one area in the form where they're stuck, and they're hoping that I will give them the answer to that question so that they can form the LLC on LegalZoom and deny me a legal fee. It happens every day. You are right that to some extent you have to go through with it, but keep in mind what your customers are not doing here is nice. They're not being nice to you, so why should you be nice to them? My philosophy of life is I'm always willing to spend a few minutes on the phone free with a client to help them sort of figure out where their head is at. Okay, you got these 3 questions. This is the one I would focus on now. The other 2 are not. As important. They can wait till later. You can help them prioritize their thinking. When most clients call me, they got 8 million issues on their head, and they can't really figure out which ones are important or not. I will always give them a little time on the phone to help them sort through that. But there comes a point where if they start asking for detailed information, I stop the conversation. I say, now, just to let you know, I think I've given you as much as I can for free. I think it's time for us to start talking about a retainer here. Here's how much I think it will cost. I'll give you an estimate. I'll do whatever. And I think you're in kind of the same boat here with this situation. You're giving away too much detail, without getting paid for it. And I think the way I would deal with it, again, I don't know your field of consulting or how practical this is, but whenever you see a client that wants too much information up front, it's time to start saying, do I really want this client here? What I would do is I'd say, well, here's the situation. I will give you an overview, a basic proposal for nothing, but assuming you want me to go into detail and do a 20-page, white paper on something, at that point I have to be retained. At some point, you have to rely on my reputation. I'll be happy to give you references from other successful consulting clients who say that I really know what I'm doing. But obviously you can understand I'm in the business where this is my product. My information is what you're paying for, and I can't afford to give out too much of it too soon. Will you lose some business that way? I think the answer is probably yes, but the business that you lose are the clients that you ultimately don't want. A client that does that to you is not going to be a long-term client. A client that tries to showroom me is somebody I know I'm not going to have a long-term relationship for. And maybe it's because I've been doing this for 35 years and I have the ability to say no that a lot of people who are just starting out don't have. Look, when I first started out, I ended up giving a lot more for free than I wanted to as well, but that has changed over time. My philosophy of life is I'm Cliff Enico. If your business needs the resources of a Cliff Enico, that is not something you're going to get from every attorney, in the state of Connecticut. That justifies a premium price, and I'm not going to give you a lot for nothing. Find a way to stage your SOW, your statement of work, in such a way that you don't end up giving the valuable information out until you are getting paid for it. And if a customer doesn't like that, find a nice way to tell them to go to hell. Someone once said of me, Cliff, you're the kind of guy that can tell someone to go to hell in such a way that they actually look forward to the trip. That is one of the nicest compliments that anyone has ever paid me. Develop the skill of saying to a client, look, I've gone as far as I really can without having some sort of a financial commitment. Let's talk about ways that we can make this a win-win for both of us. Okay.
All right, good, Cliff, good answer. And Donna agrees. Good. But one more question here from Marvette. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And it's very similar, except it's in my mind it's similar because it's also about protecting intellectual capital, although it has to do with the restaurant industry. The question is, how do you protect a business from growing competition that copies your ideas? And again,
this is very, very
Marvette
good
is in the restaurant industry.
First of all, I love that name.
Go ahead.
If you're doing Indian food, you're in the wrong business. With a name like that, I'm thinking gourmet French, 4-star Michelin, the whole bit. With a name like that, you have a lot you should be taking advantage of that. That is just a beautiful name for a restaurateur. Let me say that right now. That's some free marketing advice, by the way, which of course no lawyer is qualified to give. Anyway, let's talk about your situation. You cannot, unfortunately, in our legal system, you cannot protect an idea. If I want to do an upscale gourmet coffee company with, free trade coffee and all this kind of stuff, there's nothing to prevent me from doing that. Obviously I'm copying Starbucks model, maybe some other models as well, but there's nothing to prevent me from doing that. Unfortunately, ideas are what we consider intellectual capital, and increasingly in our digital world, information and ideas want to be free. There is something out there actually called the Copyleft movement. It's an academic movement to change the copyright laws of our country and the world, to get away from the idea of copyright being protected and more making it open source. Right now our copyright law says that when you create a work of art, you own the copyright unless you give it away to someone else. Copyleft will, if that becomes a trend, will say whenever you create a work of art, it belongs to the world unless you specifically restrict it. It's going to change the world of copyright, especially on its head, and it's creating a lot of controversy. People, and especially younger people, live in a world where information is meant to be free, and if you have a very good idea, the one thing you can be almost certain of is that it will be knocked off by someone. If not by a restaurant across town, by the Chinese. It's going to happen sooner or later. You cannot protect your idea. What you can protect are the trade secrets that make your restaurant successful. The chef, for example, who knows how to do a chicken cordon bleu better than anybody else in the world, a unique and distinctive. Maybe you're doing molecular cuisine or something like that. You cannot protect the idea. If someone wants to do a great French restaurant, 4-star Michelin restaurant with molecular cuisine. There's nothing to stop them from doing it, but the specific menu items, the recipes, the formulas, the chef's particular skill in making a hamburger the likes of which that nobody else has done, that is the stuff that you protect and that you don't want to give away, and why you might want to have your people sign agreements saying that they won't, disclose that publicly, that your chef will not do a recipe book where he gives away all your proprietary recipes, something like that. That's all, and that's all I think I can say about that, Steve.
Okay, well, that was good. Let's see, what do we got? Okay, we got time for one more. It just came in, and we actually have two more here. So let me read this first one. I'm not sure we'll get to the second one, HP, but so it's a follow-up to your answer to Donna. I understand your advice to be that the SOW/consulting work proposal for a new potential client should be a rather general overview and not all the specifics of how you do the work. I've had instances where the potential client asking me for a detailed proposal then said, we decided not to hire a consultant, but to do it internally. Ouch, lesson learned.
Right. The answer is yes. You've been taken here. You have been taken for a ride. There's no question. Most of us as teenagers heard our parents tell us, why is anybody going to ever buy, this is actually a very old-fashioned saying, and maybe it doesn't apply in today's new world of dating and human relationships. I really don't know. I'm an old fossil. But I remember my parents telling their kids sometimes, why is anybody going to ever buy the cow if you're giving the milk away for free? That saying applies very, very well in the context of business. If you give away too detailed, and let's face it, there are clients who do this deliberately. They're trying to steal your intellectual property without paying for it. These are not nice people. And whenever somebody asks for a detailed proposal, my hackles would be up. My antenna would be vibrating at that point. I'd be saying, you know what? If they want all the detail up front, what assurance do I have that they're not going to play this game that Ruth experienced? How do I know? The answer is you don't. That's why I'm suggesting do it in stages. Here's my general proposal. Here are the major subject matter headings of I write a lot of books, okay? So when I do a project like this, I'm thinking table of contents. I'll give them the overall chapter headings for free, but I'm not going to give them all the subtitles, and I'm certainly not going to give them all the bullets under that. For that, somebody should be paying me something, and I would be very upfront in my quote. If you want me to do a white paper, I'll do it, but I need this much upfront with the balance due on completion. Yes, some people will say no, and they will go elsewhere, but again, you want them to. A client that will not respond to that, a client that will not come back, an honest client will come back and say, I really like what you've done here. You clearly know what you're doing, and you're clearly the person we want to hire. Let's talk about your retainer fee. That's what you want the client to do. If they just ask you for more and more detailed information, I would throw it back at them. I would say, well, look, let me be assertive here. I've had experiences in the past where I have been burned, where I have done exactly what you're asking me to do, Mr. So-and-so, and quite frankly, what has then happened is that they've taken the information, they've used it internally, and they've stopped returning my phone calls. I can't afford to be in that situation on a recurring basis. So my apologies. Here's my reputation. I'll give you references. If you have any questions about my ability to do this work, I'll be happy to satisfy that in any way I can. But quite frankly, I am not willing to do more than this much X without getting at least some kind of an upfront commitment from you that you can afford. Let's talk about ways that we can do this in a way that's a win-win. You will lose some business that way. I can't say that you will not, but you will end up sleeping better at nights, and you will not be in this situation. I've become almost neurotic about this now. Whenever a client calls me and starts asking for detailed advice up front, I know that they're showrooming me. in some way. And maybe they have another attorney. I have had people call me because they had another attorney whose advice they disagreed with, and they were using me as a second opinion without telling me that was the case. So I give them my thought, and the next thing I know, I'm getting an angry attorney a call from some other attorney in the bar association. Say, Cliff, WTF? You told this client this. You didn't know all the facts. Yada yada. I can be sandbagged too. So anyway, that's my advice. Once burned, twice shy.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Cliff, because of the nature of this last question, I'm going to go ahead and maybe go over a minute or two, but we're right at the top of the hour now. But it's from HP. It says, challenging trying to start a small business while raising young children. It's difficult to retain focus and make time. Any suggestions?
Okay, this is a time management question. Boy, well, first of all, I don't have young children, but I feel your pain here. It's difficult. Time management is becoming increasingly impossible to do. I really am becoming convinced of that in my old age right now. I am currently overcommitted. I'm the first to admit that. I've got about 15 things that I'm doing with my life, and time management is becoming pretty near impossible. Especially if the business takes off and becomes successful. A successful business is a time vampire. It will eat every hour, every minute of every day that you have. And it will. And it is very difficult to do, and especially when you have young children and you are the primary caregiver parent. All I can suggest, you basically are faced with two naked choices, and it's one of the most difficult choices you'll have to make in life. Option number one is you focus on building the business and becoming successful, and you find other child care alternatives for your children. That means that they may not have the enriched early child experience that you want them to have, but that is a risk that you are willing to take because you want to build the business. The other option is to focus on raising your children, with your spouse, who hopefully is willing to do his or her fair share, to help you out in seeing this situation. This is a major test of a marriage, which I don't have to tell you. Focus on raising your kids and defer the business for a couple of years until your kids are in school. You have more time to deal with it, and you hope that opportunity will still be there. One of the hardest choices that my entrepreneurial clients have to make, and that I myself have to make, is choosing between the business and your family. I see a lot of people who are leaving corporate America. They're starting businesses. Some of them are successful. They're gaining traction, but the spouses are nervous about the business. They're afraid. They want the person to go back into corporate America, where quote unquote things are more secure and you get a regular paycheck. The poor client is torn between his spouse and the business, or her spouse and the business. And it's one of the hardest things you have to deal with. If you ever see me at a bar on a Saturday night with a client talking about something, we are not talking about a legal problem. We are probably talking about this work-life conflict that inevitably happens when you start a business of your own. And I don't envy you. If you ever find yourself in that situation, please call me, and I will offer whatever advice I can to help you survive this experience. But this is one of the many reasons why nature gave us liquor.
Yeah, well, on that point, let's thank you, Cliff, very much, and thanks to everybody who participated in the webinar today. And again, our plan on the webinars is to continue to offer them on a monthly basis, usually the second Tuesday of the month, and from the same time slot of 12 to noon. Hope this has been helpful. I found it informative myself. Again, Cliff, thank you. Thanks to the participants. Have a good day.
My pleasure.
Goodbye.